The clock on the wall showed 1:47 a.m. when Kimberly finally untied her apron and hung it on the hook in the staff room. Her feet ached in a way that made her want to cry, but she'd learned years ago that complaining didn't make the pain go away. 14 hours. That's how long she'd been on her feet today, moving between tables with a smile plastered on her face, refilling water glasses, taking orders, and pretending she wasn't exhausted down to her bones. She counted the tips one more time before sliding the bills into her purse. $237. Not bad for a Monday and Tuesday double shift. That money would cover half of next month's textbook for her anatomy class. The other half would have to come from somewhere else, but she'd figure it out. She always did. The Grandview Hotel restaurant was finally empty and quiet. The kitchen staff had left an hour ago, and the last customers had stumbled out around 1 o'clock, leaving behind half-eaten desserts and wine-stained napkins. Kimberly had stayed late to help the closing team finish up because that's what she did. Extra hours meant extra money, and extra money meant getting closer to that nursing degree she'd been chasing for the past 3 years. She grabbed her coat from her locker and slung her worn-out bag over her shoulder. The bag had seen better days with one strap held together by safety pins, but it still worked. Everything Kimberly owned was like that, functional but tired, holding on for just a little longer. Walking through the restaurant's back corridor, she waved goodnight to Martinez, one of the night cleaners who was mopping the kitchen floor. He waved back with a tired smile. They understood each other, the late-night workers who kept fancy places running while everyone else slept. The main lobby of the Grandview Hotel was like stepping into a different world, where the back corridors were plain and practical. The lobby was all marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and furniture that probably cost more than Kimberly's car. She always felt a little out of place walking through here in her server's uniform, past the expensive artwork and the guests in their designer clothes. At this hour, the lobby was mostly empty. The front desk had only one person working, some new guy Kimberly didn't recognize, and he was focused on his computer screen. The usual security guard, Tony, wasn't at his post by the entrance. Probably doing his rounds, she thought. That's when she noticed him. Near the main entrance, a man was leaning heavily against one of the decorative pillars. He wore an expensive-looking navy suit that probably cost more than Kimberly made in 6 months, and his gray hair was usually neat but now messy and disheveled. He looked like he was having trouble standing up straight. Kimberly's first instinct was to keep walking. It was almost 2 in the morning. She'd been working for 14 hours. Her mother was waiting up for her at home because she always worried when Kimberly worked late. This wasn't her problem. But then the man stumbled, barely catching himself on the pillar, and something in Kimberly's chest tightened. Her mother had raised her better than to walk past someone who needed help, no matter how tired she was or how much she wanted to get home. She walked over slowly, keeping her distance at first. You had to be careful approaching drunk people, especially men. You never knew how they'd react. "Sir? Are you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle but clear. The man looked up at her with unfocused eyes. Up close, she could see he was older, maybe in his 60s, with deep lines around his eyes and a face that looked like it had seen a lot of life. He smelled like whiskey, the expensive kind they served in the hotel bar at $30 a glass. I need to." He trailed off, his words slurring together. Where's Robert?" "Who's Robert, sir?" Kimberly asked, moving a little closer but still keeping her guard up. "My driver." "Robert. He's supposed to." The man waved his hand vaguely toward the entrance. "I called him, I think." "Did I call him?" He patted his pockets clumsily, nearly losing his balance again. Kimberly reached out instinctively to steady him, her hand on his elbow. He was heavier than he looked, and she had to brace herself to keep him upright. "Let's get you sitting down," she said, guiding him toward one of the plush armchairs near the entrance. He went along without resistance, collapsing into the chair with a heavy sigh. Now what? Kimberly glanced toward the front desk, but the clerk was still absorbed in whatever he was doing, apparently oblivious to the situation. Some help he was. The man in the chair had his eyes closed now, his head tilted back. For a moment, Kimberly worried he might pass out completely. She'd seen enough drunk people in her years working at the hotel to know that wasn't good. She needed to keep him awake and find his driver or someone who could help him get home safely. "Sir, stay with me," she said, her voice a little firmer now. She'd used this same tone with her younger cousins when they tried to fall asleep during long car rides. "Can you tell me your name?" He opened his eyes slowly, looking at her like he was trying to focus. "Richard. My name's Richard." "Okay, Richard. I'm Kimberly. You mentioned someone named Robert. Is that your driver?" He nodded slowly. "Robert, yes, my driver. I need to get home." "I'm going to help you with that," Kimberly assured him. "But I need to find your phone. Do you have your phone with you?" He patted his jacket pockets again, more weakly this time. Kimberly hesitated, then carefully reached toward his jacket. "I'm just going to check your pockets for your phone, okay? Just to call Robert for you." He nodded vaguely, seeming too out of it to care much. Kimberly found his phone in his inside jacket pocket. It was one of those expensive models, the latest version. Of course it was. The phone was locked, but when she held it up to Richard's face, it unlocked with facial recognition. Thank goodness for technology. She opened his recent calls and scrolled through. There were dozens of calls from numbers she didn't recognize, but then she saw it. Robert with a small car emoji next to the name. She pressed the call button and waited, her heart beating a little faster. What if this Robert person didn't answer? What if he thought she was some kind of scammer calling from his boss's phone at 2 a.m? After 4 rings, someone picked up. "Mr. Whitmore? Sir, where are you?" "I've been waiting at the restaurant entrance for 20 minutes. "This isn't Mr. Whitmore," Kimberly said quickly. "My name is Kimberly. I work at the Grandview Hotel. Your boss is in the main lobby, and I think he needs your help getting home." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Is he all right? What happened?" "He's had too much to drink," Kimberly said gently. "He's safe, just disoriented. Can you come to the main lobby entrance?" "I'm coming right now. I'm in the parking garage." 2 minutes. The relief in Robert's voice was obvious. "Please, just stay with him. Don't let him wander off." "I won't," Kimberly promised. She ended the call and looked at Richard, who had his eyes closed again. "Your driver's coming," she told him. "Just hang in there for a couple more minutes." Looking at him sitting there, vulnerable and unsteady, Kimberly felt a wave of compassion. Here was this man in his expensive suit, clearly someone important based on the quality of everything he wore, and he was just as human as anyone else. Just as capable of having a bad night, of needing help, of being lost. She wondered what had driven him to drink so much. It wasn't her business, of course, but working in a restaurant for years had taught her that people usually didn't get this drunk just for fun. There was usually something behind it. Pain, loss, stress, fear. Something that made them want to forget, at least for a little while. "Sir Richard," she said gently, "I'm going to get you some water, okay? Stay right here." She hurried to the restaurant, her tired feet forgotten for the moment. The water station was near the entrance, and she filled a glass with ice water, then grabbed a few napkins too. When she got back to the lobby, Richard was still in the chair, but he'd slumped to one side a little. "Here," she said, sitting down in the chair next to him. "Drink some water. It'll help." She held the glass up to his lips, and he took a few sips, some of the water dribbling down his chin. She wiped it away with a napkin, the way she'd done for her grandmother before she passed, the way she'd do for patients someday when she finally became a nurse. "Thank you," Richard mumbled, the words barely clear. "You're kind. You're very kind." "It's nothing," Kimberly said, but she felt a small warmth in her chest. Sometimes it felt like kindness was in short supply in the world, especially in fancy places like this where everyone was always rushing, always focused on themselves. True to his word, Robert appeared in the lobby less than 2 minutes later. He was a middle-aged black man in a driver's uniform, his face creased with worry. When he saw Richard in the chair, he rushed over. "Mr. Whitmore, sir," he said, his voice full of concern. Then he looked at Kimberly. "You're the one who called?" "Yes." "Kimberly." She stood up, suddenly feeling awkward. I found him by the entrance. He was pretty unsteady on his feet. Robert's expression shifted from worry to something that looked like gratitude mixed with guilt. I am so sorry. I was waiting by the restaurant side entrance. He must have come out the main doors instead. This isn't like him. This never happens. It's okay, Kimberly said. Everyone has bad days. You have no idea, Robert said quietly, then seemed to catch himself. He turned his attention to Richard, gently helping him to his feet. Come on, sir. Let's get you home. Mrs. Whitmore will be worried. At the mention of Mrs. Whitmore, Richard's face crumpled, and for a moment Kimberly thought he might cry. But Robert was already guiding him toward the entrance, supporting most of his weight. At the door, Robert turned back to Kimberly. Miss, I don't know how to thank you. You could have just walked past, but you didn't. That means something. That means a lot. I hope he feels better, Kimberly said simply. So do I, Robert replied, his voice heavy with meaning she didn't quite understand. So do I. She watched them go, Robert carefully helping Richard into a sleek black car parked right outside the entrance. When the car pulled away, Kimberly finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of her exhaustion again. She walked out of the hotel into the cool night air, wrapping her coat tighter around herself. The parking lot where employees left their cars was around the back, and her old Honda was waiting for her in its usual spot. As she walked, she thought about Richard, about whatever was causing him such obvious pain that he'd drunk himself into that state. She hoped he'd be okay. She hoped he had people who cared about him, who'd make sure he got help if he needed it. But she also knew she'd probably never see him again. That's how these things worked. Ships passing in the night, one moment of connection, and then everyone moved on with their lives. She unlocked her car and slid into the driver's seat, feeling the familiar rip in the upholstery that she kept meaning to fix. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from her mother. She'd call her on the drive home, let her know she was safe and on her way. As she pulled out of the parking lot, Kimberly thought about her anatomy test on Thursday, about the bills due next week, about the shift she'd picked up for Saturday night. Her life was a constant juggling act, but it was her life, and she was making it work one day at a time. That man, Richard Whitmore as Robert had called him, was probably some rich businessman who'd forget all about this night by tomorrow, and that was fine. Kimberly hadn't helped him because she expected anything in return. She'd helped him because it was the right thing to do. That's what her mother had always taught her. Do the right thing, even when nobody's watching, even when you're tired, even when you don't get anything out of it. Character isn't about what you do when it's easy or convenient. It's about what you do when it costs you something. Tonight, it had cost her 20 minutes of sleep. But Kimberly felt okay about that. She turned onto the highway, heading home, already thinking about tomorrow's shift. Life moved on. It always did. She had no way of knowing that those 20 minutes would change everything. 3 days had passed since that strange night in the lobby, and Kimberly had almost forgotten about it. Almost. Every now and then, when she was pouring coffee or clearing plates, she'd wonder if that man Richard had made it home okay, if he'd woken up with a terrible hangover, if he even remembered any of it. But mostly she was too busy to think about it much. Her life had gone right back to normal. Classes in the morning, studying in the afternoon, work in the evening. The same routine she'd been following for 3 years now, ever since she'd decided to go back to school and chase the dream of becoming a nurse. Some days it felt impossible, like she was running on a treadmill that never stopped. But she kept going because what else could she do? Quitting wasn't an option, not when her mama had worked 2 jobs her whole life to give Kimberly opportunities she never had. Thursday morning found Kimberly in her anatomy and physiology class, trying to keep her eyes open as Professor Chen droned on about the respiratory system. She'd worked until midnight the night before, then stayed up until 2 studying for this week's quiz. The words on her notebook page were starting to blur together. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. Professor Chen had a strict no-phone policy, and Kimberly couldn't afford to get on her bad side. She needed a good grade in this class. The phone buzzed again, and again. During the break, Kimberly finally checked her messages. 3 texts from her coworker, Diana, who worked the lunch shift at the hotel. Girl, something's going on at work. There are suits everywhere. Like corporate people. They're saying the hotel got bought out. Nobody knows what's happening. Kimberly's stomach dropped. Bought out? That couldn't be good. When big companies took over, the first thing they usually did was cut staff to save money. She thought about her job, about the steady paycheck that was barely enough but at least was steady. She thought about her tuition payment due next month. She texted back quickly, "Do you know if they're firing people?" The response came fast, "Don't know yet." But everyone's nervous. Hayes is walking around like he owns the place, sucking up to the suits. Hayes. Just thinking about that man made Kimberly's jaw tighten. Gerald Hayes was the hotel manager, and he was the kind of boss who made work miserable. He treated the cleaning staff like they were invisible, and talked down to the servers like they were stupid. He had his favorites, mostly the young, pretty servers who laughed at his jokes and didn't complain when he stood too close. Kimberly wasn't one of his favorites, which was fine by her. She didn't want to be. The second half of class dragged by even slower than the first. Kimberly couldn't focus on anything Professor Chen was saying. Her mind kept spinning with worry. What if she lost her job? How would she pay for school? How would she help her mama with the rent? When class finally ended, she practically ran to her car. Her shift didn't start until 5, but she needed to know what was happening. She needed to see for herself. The parking lot at the Grandview Hotel was fuller than usual for a Thursday afternoon. Kimberly recognized some of the cars belonging to the day shift staff, but there were also several expensive-looking vehicles she'd never seen before. Black luxury sedans with tinted windows, the kind of cars that screamed money and power. Inside, the lobby had a strange energy. Everything looked the same marble floors and crystal chandeliers, but there was a tension in the air. 2 women in sharp business suits stood near the front desk, talking in low voices and making notes on tablets. A man in an expensive watch was taking photos of the restaurant entrance. Kimberly walked quickly toward the staff area, keeping her head down. In the employee corridor, she found a small crowd gathered near the break room. Diana was there, along with Carlos and Miguel from maintenance, Teresa from housekeeping, and a few others. "What's going on?" Kimberly asked, dropping her bag on the break room table. Diana turned to her, eyes wide. "It's true. The whole chain got bought. Some big corporation called Whitmore Industries. Whitmore." The name hit Kimberly like a physical thing. Whitmore. That's what the driver had called him, Mr. Whitmore. Richard Whitmore. "Did you say Whitmore?" she asked, her voice coming out strange. "Yeah, why? You know them?" Kimberly shook her head slowly. "No, I think I heard the name somewhere. It couldn't be the same person, could it?" The drunk man she'd helped. The one stumbling around the lobby at 2 a.m, he owned a company big enough to buy an entire hotel chain. The odds seemed impossible. "They're doing meetings all day," Carlos said, his accent thick with worry. "Individual meetings with all the managers and supervisors. Nobody knows if we're keeping our jobs or what." "Hayes has been kissing up like crazy," Teresa added, shaking her head. "You should see him. It's embarrassing." "What about us?" Kimberly asked. "The regular staff?" Diana shrugged. "Nobody's told us anything. They're supposed to make an announcement tomorrow, but who knows? These corporate types, they don't care about people like us. We're just numbers on a spreadsheet." The worry that had been sitting in Kimberly's stomach all day grew heavier. She thought about her mama, about how hard they'd both worked to get her this far in school. She thought about dropping out, about all that effort wasted. She thought about going back to working 2 or 3 jobs just to survive, about the dream of being a nurse slipping further and further away. "We should get back to work," she said finally. "Standing around worrying isn't going to change anything." The afternoon shift started rough. The whole staff was on edge, and it showed. Orders got mixed up. Someone dropped a tray of glasses in the kitchen, and the crash made everyone jump. Hayes kept appearing randomly, checking on things he never usually cared about, his fake smile plastered on his face. Around 6:30, during the dinner rush, Kimberly was taking an order from a couple at table 12 when she noticed more of those corporate types walking through the restaurant. They weren't eating, just observing, watching how things worked. One of them, a woman with silver hair and an expensive-looking blazer, made notes while she watched the servers work. It made Kimberly's skin crawl, being watched like that. Being evaluated. She kept her smile professional and her service perfect, but inside her anxiety was building. "Kimberly," Hayes's voice cut across the restaurant. He never called servers by name unless something was wrong. "Come here for a moment," her heart sank. This was it. They were firing people already, and she was first on the list. She walked over to where Hayes stood near the host stand, trying to keep her expression neutral. "Yes, sir." "These are representatives from Whitmore Industries," Hayes said, gesturing to the 3 people standing with him, including the silver-haired woman. "They're observing our operations today. I was just telling them about our excellent staff." The word excellent coming out of Hayes's mouth about the staff was such obvious nonsense that Kimberly almost laughed. He'd never said anything excellent about any of them before. "How long have you worked here?" the silver-haired woman asked. Her voice was professional but not unkind. 3 years, ma'am," Kimberly replied. "And you're studying nursing?" The woman glanced at a tablet in her hands. "It says here you're in school part-time. How did they know that? Did they have files on all the employees already?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm hoping to graduate next year." The woman nodded, made a note, and then smiled slightly. "Thank you. Please return to your work." Kimberly nodded and walked away, her mind racing. They knew she was in school. They had information about her. Was that good or bad? Did they want employees who were trying to better themselves, or did they see it as a liability, someone who might leave once they got their degree? The rest of the shift was a blur. Kimberly moved through her tables on autopilot, her mind only half on the orders and refills. At one point she saw Hayes talking animatedly to another group of suits, his hands gesturing broadly. He was probably taking credit for things he had nothing to do with, making himself sound indispensable. When her shift finally ended at 11, Kimberly was emotionally exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. She changed out of her uniform slowly, not eager to rush home to a night of anxious thoughts. Diana caught her in the parking lot. "Hey, wait up," Kimberly stopped, keys in hand. "Yeah? You okay? You seemed stressed today." "Well, more stressed than usual." "I'm fine," Kimberly said automatically, then sighed. "No, that's a lie. I'm worried, Di. I can't lose this job. I know it's not perfect and Hayes is terrible, but I need it. We all need it," Diana said quietly. "That's the thing they count on, you know. They know we can't afford to lose our jobs, so they can do whatever they want." "You think they're going to cut people?" Diana shrugged. "I don't know, maybe. Or maybe they'll cut our hours or our benefits. There's always something. Rich people don't get rich by being generous to folks like us." They stood in silence for a moment, the parking lot lights casting long shadows between the cars. "My cousin worked at a hotel that got bought out," Diana continued. "They brought in all new management, cut the staff by a third, and made everyone else work twice as hard for the same pay. It was a nightmare." "That's encouraging," Kimberly said dryly. "I'm just saying, prepare yourself. Don't get your hopes up that things will get better." "My hopes weren't up to begin with," Kimberly replied. "I just want things to stay the same. Same terrible boss, same low pay, same long hours. At least it's familiar terrible." Diana laughed, but it was a tired sound. "Girl, we need to find better dreams." "I've got dreams," Kimberly said. "I dream about graduating, about having a job where people respect me, where I make enough money to help my mama retire. I dream about not being so tired all the time." "Sounds nice," Diana said wistfully. "Let me know if you figure out how to make those dreams happen." They said goodnight, and Kimberly drove home through streets that were mostly empty at this time of night. The radio was on, but she wasn't really listening. Her mind kept going over everything, worrying at the problem like a sore tooth. When she got home, the lights were still on in their small apartment. Her mama was waiting up like always. She was sitting on the couch with her reading glasses on, a book in her lap, but Kimberly could tell she hadn't really been reading. She'd been worrying. "Hey, Mama," Kimberly said, dropping her bag by the door and collapsing onto the couch next to her mother. "Long day?" her mama asked, closing her book. "Long week," Kimberly replied, "and it's only Thursday." Her mama didn't say anything, just wrapped an arm around Kimberly's shoulders and pulled her close. They sat like that for a while, the TV playing quietly in the background. "Something's wrong," her mama said finally. It wasn't a question. Kimberly told her about the buyout, about the corporate people, about the uncertainty hanging over everything. "You worried about your job?" her mama asked. "I'm worried about everything," Kimberly admitted. "If I lose this job, I'll have to drop out of school, at least for a semester. And if I do that, I might never go back. You know how it is. Life gets in the way." "Life's already in the way, baby," her mama said gently. "You're making it work anyway. You're stronger than you think." "I don't feel strong. I feel tired. Strong people get tired too. That's not weakness." That's being human. Kimberly leaned her head on her mama's shoulder, feeling about 12 years old again. What if I can't do this? What if it's too hard? Then it's too hard and we figure something else out, her mama said simply. But I don't think you're at that point yet. I think you're scared and that's okay. But don't let fear make decisions for you. The next day, Friday, the announcement came during the afternoon staff meeting. Everyone had to attend, from the kitchen staff to the front desk to housekeeping. They all crowded into the hotel's conference room, a space usually reserved for business meetings and corporate events. Hayes stood at the front with the silver-haired woman from the night before and two other executives. He looked nervous despite his attempts to appear confident. The silver-haired woman stepped forward. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patricia Locke, and I'm the Regional Director for Whitmore Industries. As you've all heard by now, this hotel and the entire chain has been acquired by our company. A murmur ran through the crowd. I know change is scary, Patricia continued. But I want to assure you that we're not here to destroy what works. We're here to improve it. However, that does mean we'll be making some changes to management structure and operations. Kimberly's hands were clenched so tight her nails dug into her palms. We'll be restructuring the management team, Patricia said, her eyes scanning the room. This doesn't mean mass layoffs, but it does mean some positions will change. We value experience, dedication, and most importantly, integrity. Over the next week, we'll be conducting evaluations and interviews to ensure we have the right people in the right positions. The murmuring got louder. Next to Kimberly, Diana whispered, Here we go. The nice words before they fire everybody. We believe in promoting from within when possible, Patricia continued. Many of you have worked here for years. You know this hotel better than anyone. We want to tap into that knowledge and experience. It all sounded good, but Kimberly had learned not to trust corporate speak. They always made things sound positive even when they were terrible. That's all for now, Patricia concluded. Your supervisors will have more information for you next week. Thank you for your time. People filed out slowly, everyone talking in hushed, worried voices. Kimberly headed back to the restaurant, her mind spinning. 1 week. In 1 week, her whole life might change, and there was nothing she could do about it. She thought about Richard Whitmore again, wondering if he had any idea what his company was doing to people like her. Probably not. Rich people rarely thought about the human cost of their business decisions. As she tied her apron on and prepared for the dinner shift, Kimberly made herself a promise. Whatever happened, she wouldn't give up. She'd figure it out, find another job if she had to, work 3 jobs if that's what it took. She'd come too far to quit now, but deep down, under the determination, the fear remained. Because sometimes, no matter how hard you worked or how much you tried, things fell apart anyway, and there was nothing you could do but watch it happen. Monday morning started like any other. Kimberly's alarm went off at 6, and she dragged herself out of bed after hitting snooze twice. The weekend had been long, filled with extra shifts and anxiety about what the new week would bring. All through her classes, she'd barely been able to concentrate, her mind constantly drifting back to the hotel and what changes were coming. By the time her afternoon shift rolled around, her nerves were stretched thin. She'd had 3 cups of coffee and still felt like she was moving through fog. Diana had texted her during lunch, saying that people were being called into the office one by one, but nobody was saying what the meetings were about. Kimberly arrived at the hotel at 3:30 for her 4 o'clock shift. Wanting a few minutes to mentally prepare herself, the employee parking lot was busier than usual. Through the back entrance, she could see staff members clustered in small groups talking in worried voices. She'd just opened her locker when Hayes appeared in the doorway of the break room. His face was pale, and for once his usual arrogant expression was nowhere to be seen. He looked almost scared. Kimberly Johnson? He said, reading from a paper in his hand. Her heart stopped. Yes? You're needed in the administrative office. Conference room B. The room went quiet. Everyone was staring at her. Being called to the office was never good news. Right now? She asked, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. Yes. Now. Kimberly closed her locker slowly, her hands shaking slightly. Diana caught her eye and mouthed, "Good luck." Carlos made the sign of the cross. Great, even they thought she was about to get fired. Thank you, he said simply, for that night. I never got to properly thank you. My wife wanted me to tell you that too. She said anyone who would help a stranger in need is someone special. Kimberly felt tears prick her eyes. How is she? Your wife? Fighting, Richard said. And for a moment the powerful executive was gone, and she saw just a man who was scared of losing someone he loved. She's fighting hard. Thank you for asking. Kimberly nodded, not trusting her voice, and left the room. The hallway outside was empty and quiet. She stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Assistant hotel manager. It didn't feel real. She made it to the bathroom before the tears came. Not sad tears, but overwhelmed tears, scared tears, happy tears. All mixed together until she didn't know what she was feeling anymore. After a few minutes, she splashed cold water on her face and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked the same. Same brown eyes, same tired expression, same server's uniform. But everything had changed. When she made it back downstairs, Diana was waiting by the lockers, anxiety written all over her face. Well, what happened? Are you fired? No, Kimberly said slowly. I'm not fired. Thank God, you scared us all. Hayes has been in meetings all day and people are saying he's getting demoted or something. Nobody knows what's going on. Kimberly thought about telling Diana everything, but something held her back. She needed to process this herself first. She needed to talk to her mama. Everything's fine, she said. Just some questions about scheduling. It was a lie, and Diana looked skeptical, but she let it go. The rest of Kimberly's shift passed in a blur. She moved through her tables automatically, her mind miles away. She kept replaying the meeting in her head, hearing Richard's words over and over. Character matters more than credentials, but was that true? Or was she about to make a fool of herself by accepting a job she had no business doing? When her shift ended, Kimberly drove home in a daze. The streets were dark and quiet, and she barely remembered the route. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tight, and her mind raced with possibilities and fears. At home, her mama was already in bed, but the light under her door was on. Kimberly knocked softly. Come in, baby. Her mama was sitting up in bed with a book, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She took one look at Kimberly's face and set the book aside. Sit down and tell me what happened. So Kimberly did. She told her everything. About Richard Whitmore being the man from the lobby. About the job offer. About the training and the benefits and the tuition reimbursement. About how scared she was that she couldn't do it. When she finished, her mama was quiet for a long moment. What do you think I should do? Kimberly asked. I think, her mama said slowly, that you've been waiting for permission to be more than what you are. You've been working yourself to the bone, trying to prove you deserve good things. But baby, you already deserve them. You've always deserved them. But what if I fail? Then you fail, her mama said simply. And then you figure out what comes next. But you know what's worse than failing? Never trying. Spending the rest of your life wondering what might have happened if you'd been brave enough to say yes. Kimberly felt something shift in her chest, like a knot loosening. This man, this Mr. Whitmore, he saw something in you, her mama continued. And it wasn't because of that night, not really. That just gave him a chance to see what was already there. You're smart, Kimberly. You're kind. You work hard. You care about people. Those are the things that make a good leader. I'm scared, Mama. Good. Being scared means it matters. Now the question is, are you going to let fear make your decisions, or are you going to be brave? Kimberly thought about it. About her years of working double shifts and studying until her eyes burned. About her mama working 2 jobs her whole life. About how many times she'd been overlooked and underestimated. Maybe it was time to take a chance on herself. Maybe it was time to be brave. Kimberly didn't sleep much that night. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind raced with thoughts about the job offer. Around 3 in the morning, she finally gave up on sleep and sat at their small kitchen table with a cup of tea, watching the darkness outside slowly turn to gray. She made 2 lists on a piece of notebook paper. One side for reasons to say yes, one side for reasons to say no. The no side filled up fast. No management experience. No business degree. People would think she didn't deserve it. She might fail spectacularly and lose everything. Hayes would probably badmouth her to everyone. The yes side was shorter but heavier. Financial stability, health insurance. School paid for. A chance to make things better for people like Diana and Carlos. A chance to prove she was more than just a waitress. And underneath it all, written small at the bottom of the page, what if Mama's right? What if I can do this? By the time the sun came up, Kimberly had made her decision. She was terrified, but she was going to say yes. Her mama was right. She'd spent her whole life waiting for permission to dream bigger. Maybe it was time to give herself that permission. She got ready for the meeting with shaking hands, changing her outfit 3 times before settling on a simple navy dress and her one pair of good shoes. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked professional. She looked like someone who could be an assistant manager, she hoped. The drive to the hotel felt different this morning. Instead of parking in the employee lot in the back, she parked in the main lot next to cars that cost more than she made in a year. Small steps toward a new life. Patricia and the young man from yesterday, who introduced himself as David Chen from corporate HR, were waiting in conference room B. Richard Whitmore wasn't there this time. "Ms. Johnson," Patricia said, standing to shake her hand. "Thank you for coming back. Have you had time to think about our offer?" "Yes, ma'am." Kimberly's voice was steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "I'd like to accept the position, if the offer's still available." Patricia smiled, genuine warmth in her expression. "It absolutely is. Welcome to the management team." David opened a folder and began explaining the details. The salary was more than double what she'd been making as a waitress. The benefits package included health insurance, dental, vision, and a retirement plan. The tuition reimbursement would cover her remaining nursing school costs entirely. "Your 3-month training period starts immediately," Patricia explained. "You'll spend the first month shadowing me at our flagship property downtown. The second month, you'll rotate through different departments here, learning operations from every angle. The third month, you'll work directly with our outgoing manager to transition into the role." "Wait," Kimberly said. "Hayes is staying for 3 months?" "No," Patricia said, and there was a hint of satisfaction in her tone. "Gerald Hayes is being transferred immediately. We're bringing in someone else to manage during your training period, someone who actually knows how to lead with respect." Relief washed over Kimberly. At least she wouldn't have to deal with Hayes undermining her while she learned. "I have to ask," Kimberly said carefully, "what happens after 3 months if I'm not good at this? If I can't handle it?" David leaned forward. "That's a fair question. This isn't a test you can fail, Ms. Johnson. It's a learning process. Yes, there will be challenges. Yes, you'll make mistakes. Everyone does. But we're investing in your success, which means giving you the support and resources to succeed. If after 3 months you decide management isn't for you, we'll help you find another position in the company that fits better. You won't be thrown out on the street. And if people say I only got this job because of that night with Mr. Whitmore," Kimberly asked. "Because that's what they'll say. People will think I didn't earn this." Patricia nodded slowly. "Some people will think that, yes. Some people will always find reasons to doubt you, especially when you're a young black woman taking a leadership role. But here's what I've learned in 25 years of corporate management. You can't control what people think. You can only control what you do. Show up, work hard, treat people well, and let your actions speak for themselves." "Mr. Whitmore wanted me to give you this," David said, sliding an envelope across the table. "He's with his wife today. She has a treatment session." Kimberly opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive paper. "Dear Ms. Johnson," it read in neat, careful handwriting. "My wife Catherine wanted me to write this to you. She said the measure of a person isn't what they do when someone's watching, but what they do when no one will ever know. You helped a stranger when you were exhausted, when you had nothing to gain, when you could have simply walked past. That tells us everything we need to know about who you are. Don't doubt yourself. You've already proven you have what matters most. The rest is just details. With gratitude, Richard and Catherine Whitmore." Kimberly had to blink back tears. She folded the note carefully and put it back in the envelope. "So," Patricia said gently, "are you ready to start?" "Yes," Kimberly said, and this time her voice was strong. "Yes, I'm ready." The next 3 months were the hardest of Kimberly's life. The first week alone nearly broke her. She started by having to tell her coworkers. Diana's reaction was pure joy, screaming and hugging her right there in the break room. Carlos was thrilled, already joking about how he'd always known she was special. Teresa,